Welcome back to Martha's Vineyard here. This is the 2015-2016 season, which we're referring to as Phase 2. So this is a very exciting phase of the project. We've restored the building structurally. We've installed a oak post and beam first floor framing system. We've jacked the house back up, improving the shape of the house. And now we're just finishing up the restoration of the subroofing. The new roofers will be going over that, and then the shingling starts. So we button up the exterior. The goal is to get to the point where the exterior is weather tight. It's very possible that the original windows in here were either a leaded casement or a leaded double hung window. And the story goes on those that during the Revolutionary War, those leaded casement windows were taken apart so that the lead could be melted down and used as bullets. So there aren't a lot of existing surviving examples of leaded casement windows. But we didn't want to have leaded casement on this side and 6x8 panes over here. So the decision was made to use the windows to the 1730 period. Now, the first thing you have to do is these pieces are solid. They're out of 3x4 inch wood. They pass through the sill here with a mortise and tenon, and the windows are done exactly as they were done in 1710, only we use modern machinery to keep the cost down. Same thing with the actual sash. We start with 6x8 panes and then we build the sash. So all of our coping patterns, all of our intersecting molding profiles are all taken off of historic windows that we have in our shop. And so those windows and the entranceways are installed now, and we're beginning to put the trim kit on. And the trim kit in an 18th century house like this is usually beaded corner boards and horizontal water table board and a very simple soffit here. In the case of this house, the roofers extended down in the front and that created the soffit. We did find some serious termite damage and we used 18th century materials to replace the rotted materials. Here you'll see we're just starting to tooth in some of the roofers. Now what's unique is the roofers run from the peak down to the soffit. Most houses, your roofers are running perpendicular to the rafters. So you say, well, why is that? That is actually not uncommon in what we call a purlin roof system. In a purlin roof system, you've got a primary rafter and then smaller connecting purlins. That goes back to the days when there was thatch on the roofs. There would be more purlins, but they were tying the thatch off to those purlins. So they kept this tradition. It requires very long roofers. And that's another anomaly here that you don't see in the majority of the 18th century houses. And when you do see it, it's in a very early house. The house was added on to, we think, around 1730, 1740, and they kept that same tradition. So this may be one of those buildings where the grandfather had a little say in Phase 2. One thing you might want to notice, if you notice the ends of these original roofers, they have a plumb cut. And so those were originally laid out in that long length. I think they're close to 18 feet. And that plumb cut was put on because then a flat board would go up against it. In most 18th century capes, you end up having a crown molding. But in this case, this was such an early house and such a simple structure that it would be just a beveled board nailed up against that. So that gives us a guideline as to how the original soffit was laid out, and then as we fill in these boards, we'll cut them to match. Once the older roofers have been spliced in and the roof is ready, the new roofers will go down, stained on the inside, so that when you're in the attic, you'll still be able to experience the original old 17th and 18th century environment here. You'll see on the exterior, we're using white cedar shingles. On the roof, we're going to go with a material that looks like white cedar, but it's actually an Alaskan yellow cedar. So as the shingles go on, the windows all get the lead flashing over them. The front entranceway and the two rear entranceways will have the original hardware put on, and those doors will be rehung. The goal here is to have an accurate representation of what life was like in the 18th century without running water, without electricity, without central heat, without insulation, without bathrooms. Most houses get over-restored and people try to bring them into the 21st century. We're doing the opposite, kicking and screaming. We're pushing this house back to 1730 and saying, stay there. That's what we want to show people, and that's where the value of this type of building is. You have the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th century all under one roof. So each one has a different character, each one has different woodworking, and each one was built by somebody else's hands to create this one great, small, historic home.